Thank you everybody for coming today. It means a great deal to me. On my 82nd birthday, Marilyn Monroe, who was 17 on the day I was born, will be 99 today. Sadly passed away at 36. Pat Boone, 91 today. Pat Boone. Morgan Freeman, 81 today. Still going strong. Somebody said a very kind thing to me this week. He said, Jeff, you are Colne's answer to John Betjeman. That's a big honour, and that's somebody who lives away. So that means a lot. But poor old John Benjamin only reached 77. So I'm 5 years up, John, I'm 5 years up. We'll start with the Tower Ballroom. What a wonderful building. This won awards when it was opened 125 years ago in August. 125 years ago. It's been called many, many things. My dear daughter Jeanette and Darren, who she's with now, 35 years ago, had their engagement party in the Tower Ballroom suite. It has the best dancing floor of any in Lancashire. Better than the Romano, better than the Astoria. It's absolutely superb up there. It's been many things over the years, as this building. The Brasserie, Frank's, Zebras, which is probably named after the zebra that escaped down by that tree down there from Sanger's Circus, but more of that after. My son Sean, he said, 2 more, Dad, you can't forget. The Clarets Bar, come back Jimmy Mack, we need him next year. And another one, the Rock Coven. 3 brothers did that. But my generation and everybody of my generation will remember Romano's. Oh, the best jukebox in Lancashire. Better than the Sunbeck at Nelson. Do you remember Sunbeck, Craig? Yeah. Oh, that was a brilliant place. They used to sell cigarettes for 1 threepence behind the counter. Threepence less than anywhere else. Lots of folk used to go from the school to get them, but that's another story. Romano's. Wait, what a name. Where does it come from? 3 businessmen in Colne. They named it R.A. Rennie Allen, the dentist. B.A. Ken Backhouse, driving school. And the last one, bit straight is N.O. Romano's, George Nolan, a solicitor. It was all a front. Romano's was from the youth of yesterday, my generation, playing the jukebox. Behind, don't rain on us, dear Lord. Behind was a gambling den of iniquity. They'd roulette wheels, they'd blackjack. It was just like the Las Vegas of the North. Believe me. And the 3 businessmen who did it, Ronnie Allen, Ken Backhouse, George Nolan, a solicitor, they started this gambling in Colne, and it took off big style. And Romano's had the best jukebox. I used to play Jimmy Jones' Good Timing, only 6pence, 2.5 pence today. I used to play Shadows, Apache, Del Shannon, Runaway. Now my dear friend, Terence Tiger Atkins, his dad George used to play for Colne CC. He used to go in there after work every day with a ½ crown and put on whatever he liked of the day and play it 5 times. Very loud jukebox. And there was one called in 1962, Nut Rocker by B. Bumble and the Stingers. You might not have heard of it. It's like Brooke E. Bond and the Tea Leaves, another group that's long gone. He put it on 5 times. Nut Rocker. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. George Nolan came out. He says, you're barred. He says, you can't bar me. I'm putting good money in here. He said, I spend 10 shilling every night. He says, you're barred. He says, you can't bar me. Anyway, he says, well, don't play it again. What he did then, Terence Atkins, he put on Cathy's Clown, probably the loudest record of the 1960s, and played it another 5 times. He never got barred. A wonderful building, that. And today there will be some prizes. better than a Paul Hollywood handshake, I'm giving out Geoff Crambie half crowns. Whoa, right. First one with a hand up. What year was the Tower building built?
1900.
Well done, young lady. 1900. Look at the top. There it is. 1900. In August, 125 years ago. If you ever go upstairs, that ballroom, you can do all the bopping, you can leap about like a yo-yo. It's wonderful. It's a sprung floor. And many years ago, they had strobe lighting. You felt like you were Jimi Hendrix going round the... Oh, it was frightening. But a wonderful building that still survives today. Now, I'm going to tell you about another wonderful building that's sadly gone. And this building was one of the finest buildings in Colne, bulldozed down just after the war. So if we can go this way, ladies and gents. Oh, that's where the zebra ran down many years ago. And here, I'll just find it. I don't want to disturb the microphone. The zebra was caught after enticing it back with some swedes and carrots from the market. Whoop. Sorry about that. Didn't expect it to see, Jacob. Right. Now this wonderful picture here is elephants, tigers, camel, everything. Zebras coming along Keighley Road in 1890. I don't know whether you can capture that. Can you get that, Jacob? Yeah. But the thing I want to tell you about is this building here. 16 chimneys. That meant it had 16 fireplaces. It had 10 people who looked after the building. They had butlers, they had kitchen maids, upstairs, downstairs, and the building belonged to Colne's second mayor, Calvin Knight, Alderman Calvin Knight JP, a wonderful fella. He had the biggest beard of any of the 46 mayors, a wonderful beard. John Francis Edward Ilott had the most wonderful moustache in 1974, but Calvin Knight had the greatest beard. The best pair of sideburns ever in Colne was Frank Richmond, who had Richmond's Ironmongers. And if you ever go just past the Red Lion and that little courtyard there, just near Evercare, that's Richmond Court, named after him. He had sideburns better than Elvis. He was a marvellous fella. But these elephants, an elephant did escape, same as, it might be hearsay this, but they said an elephant ran down there as well. They used to come along here and go right down to the Crown and then through to White Walls, where there was a wonderful circus ground. And an elephant wrapped itself around a tree, but that might be just hearsay. But the zebra definitely escaped. It made even the national newspapers. Now that building I have just shown you, Northfield House. It was a wonderful building. If we go further on, I'll show you where it was. Front of the church, long gone. The church used to come right out to here, and that was bulldozed down in the 1980s. Sadly gone now. I'll just let everybody get here, Jacob. Come on, Mr. Sun, don't let us down. Are we all ready? Where Peterborough Whistle Fold is, that was that wonderful 1742 building, Northfield House, where Calvin Knight lived. He was the mayor of Colne, the second mayor of Colne after Sam Catlaw, 1897 to 1899. His son, Rennie Knight, lived over there. This is a very famous building for Colne personalities. Rennie Knight lived there, and he was the Mayor of Colne 1913 to 1916. Frank Wilson lived there, who was Colne's last Freeman, the last one of all. Lovely fella, Frank. He was Mayor 1952-1953. And also lived there was the Major Stanley Hyde Ridioff. I worked for the Major. Always had to stand to attention. Hello there. He was, during the war, he became a war hero, fought in Germany, and he became Major Stanley Hyde Ridioff, MBE, TD, DL, HS. All them letters behind his name. What it meant was, member of the British Empire, Territorial Division, Deputy Leader, High Sheriff. He was the High Sheriff of Lancashire in 1977. Brilliant. He was a very proud Colner, and his family ran Ridioff's timber yard for many, many years. Gone now, sadly. He'd no sons to take it over. He'd daughters, but the daughters obviously didn't want to carry it on. So that's where they all lived at number 10. Number 10, East Parade. It wasn't Keithley Road then. That is called East Parade. Posh, very posh. This was East Leams, and this building belonged to the Eyre family. Miss Georgina Eyre was a multimillionaire. She had a private school. Oh, I'll just go back here. Sorry, Jacob. I haven't got air to keep me dry. This was a wonderful building, and today, of course, is Peter Bowisell Community Centre. Thanks to Peter Bowisell bequest, it's still going today, and now there's some more houses round the back which are called Leams. And East Leams was Miss Georgina Eyre's family home, and they had it for 200 years. Carrie Bridge, old Carrie Brig as we Colners call it. It has, let me neck. Are we all right? It has 17 standing stones as you're coming up or down. And they, do you want to go around the corner?
Yeah, when you come around the corner.
Okay. Oh, it's better here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, good thinking. You'll be out heading this, won't you, Jacob? Hey, different again round here. That's better. Are you all right? Whew. It's very good of you to turn out. Right, so let's tell you about Carrie Brig, a wonderful old place. My grandson Nathan used to go down there looking for sticklebacks and minnows and beardies and all them sort of fish. And one day, a wonderful day, when he was 7 years old, we were down there scrabbling about. He had his little fishing net, and suddenly, out of the undergrowth, a pterodactyl. It looked like one. I told Nathan it was a pterodactyl. It was, of course, a heron. And believe me, that day, it brushed over us and you could feel its feet. It was wonderful. All the wings. If you ever see one in flight, pterodactyl. And he still thinks it's a pterodactyl to this day. Wonderful birds, herons. Curlews, I love them to bits. You can see curlews on the hills there, of course, and lapwings. But Carrie Bridge, these 17 standing stones have been there since the 1840s. Why are they there? Well, the standing stones, and if you go down and have a look, there's one of them broke, sadly, opposite Diamond Drive, which has just been built by our friend Tim Webber, Mr. Barnfield, naughty, naughty. Barnfield comes from Barnoldswick, one of the founders, Briarfield, the other founder, so Barnfield. Anyway, one of them has been smashed, so I must tell Tim, because he's going to get this otherwise, he must put that back, because them 17 standing stones in a few years will have been there 200 years, and we want them to survive. They were there for the horse and carts. I'm fortunate. I've ridden a horse up there. It's marvellous. You can gallop up, and then if you want to stop your cart bringing things into Colne, of course, you could stand it on the standing stones, which was brilliant. So all them years they've been stood there. And do go down and have a look sometime. We won't go down today because we've plenty to get on with, but they are a survivor from Colne's past. At the corner is another survivor, and number 18 Keighley Road. Brenda Maley used to live there, a bonny young girl, and also it was to become a pub when it was built. It was going to be the old Grey Mare. And what happened was, when it was built, they decided, with 51 pubs being in Colne, there were too many. There's only 16 today. Colne used to have 51 pubs. We had a White Horse Inn, we had a Black Horse Inn, we had a Bay Horse Inn, and we nearly had a Grey Mare Inn. It never to be, sadly. I wish they'd have had it, but it's a wonderful building. Excuse me. It's just been renovated throughout, so I'm very pleased about that, because it is a part of Old Colne that still survives, just the same as Georgina Ayres' house survives. And number 10, where 2 mayors and a Freeman have lived, and a High Sheriff, of course. This building here, the Colne Royal British Legion, that building there was built in the Queen's coronation year, 1953. But there was one there because, before, of course, that was built in the 1920s. And this is a lovely building in Colne. The views are stunning, looking over Ladlow and Troth and all over there. Some great characters in there. Frank Riley still goes in, the joiner, a master joiner. There's Bob Ellis, there's Jimmy Fitz. There are some great characters. But in 1960, this made the national newspapers for the British Legion riot. Yes, a riot, and that took place there. 4 of the most notorious Colners had a field day. These are the names. These are people who you don't want to meet on a dark night, believe me. Ivan Sharples, Lukey Lowe, George Kelly, and Wilf Walker. Wilf Walker was Cider Ronnie's, Ronnie Ashworth, of course, Cider Ronnie's uncle. These were tough. And what had happened, Wilf Walker, he lived just on there, and Wilf Walker had a win at Alty Nutters, and the win was big money, because he put 10 shillings on a horse and it came in 50 to 1. £25 in 1960. You were like a millionaire. It was fantastic. And what happened was, they went through every club in Colne. What happened used to happen then, I was barman sometime later than that. I was the first barman at the Shepherd's Arms, 1963. But in 1960, the pubs used to close in the afternoon at 3 o'clock, and all the clubs were open. So, beer was then only a shilling a pint. So these lads were getting popped up. They started at the NUR. They went to the cloth lookers, to the dressers, to the twisters and drawers, to the pigeon club. They went in everyone. They were staggering. Then they heard, and this was only rumour, but they heard that the Legion was selling beer half price. Oh, 6pence a pint. Let's get on there. Let's go and see. These 4 lads, and John Channer Greenwood told me this. Channer Greenwood, a strongest man in Colne, stronger than Harold French. Oh, he was so unbelievable. A picking stick, now a picking stick, whacks a shuttle across on the looms. I've heard it, I worked in the noise. And it's about that thick. He once broke one across his knee, John Channer Greenwood. Anyway, John tells me he was in at the time. He was a member of the Armed Forces, of course, and they became members of the Royal British Legion. Anyway, these 4 go in. The barman, they didn't call them barman in them days, they called them bar stewards. It probably was. Anyway, what happened was, he says, you can't come in here, you're out. Of course we can come in, we're paying good money. He got his 10 bob note out. He says, drinks all round. He says, you're barred. And this was a big fella. Fred, they called him. I remember him well. Anyway, these lads weren't having any. We're not being barred. Give us. Anyway, then it started the riot. The snooker table, now snooker tables have a slate bed, unbelievably heavy. And Lukey Lowe got hold of one end, and George Kelly got hold of the other, and they tipped the snooker table over. Balls were rolling everywhere. I've never seen a snooker table tipped over, but it happened that day. It was the British Legion riot. The police were called out, of course. Harry Bricknell and all the usual crew coming with the truncheons out, and I believe they all got arrested, and they were all fined 15 shilling each.
Oh.
So a lot of money in them days. Anyway, they had the money because they'd just won £50. Anyway, there it is, the British Legion riot. We'll talk about another riot further on when we get to Colne Cemetery, which had far worse outcome. Which it's a really fantastic story, and one I think you want to hear. That wonderful Chilean pine monkey puzzle tree, I want you all to try and climb it after, if you'd like to have a dabble. The best one is at Clitheroe Castle. There's a wonderful monkey puzzle tree there, but that's been there many, many years. I can remember that when I was a young lad. So, we'll go further on now, and we have more tales of yesteryear.
Thank you.
It's fined up. Yeah. Hey, the good Lord loves us. These all date from the 1920s and post office telephones. Of course, this is when everybody had a telephone, and these mobiles now, people don't. I mean, we've had our telephone in since 1977, and I won't do away with the landline. But there's about 100 of these through Colne, and you can see them, and they're a step from the past, you know, they're obsolete now. They used to go down, and all the wires were there for all the houses, and it's something that people don't need landlines really now. Okay, this row of houses here has always been known, and these houses are quite old, they're 1840s, as Dubbin Row. And nobody, Wilfred Spencer, Ebenezer Foley, Henry Folds, eminent Colne historians, never known the reason why that's Dubbin Row. But this is Keithley Road, of course, and two houses were knocked out. I think they were number 44 and 46. And they demolished the houses to make Grosvenor Street, or as Posh Colners call it, Grosvenor Street. But that is a wonderful little street there behind called Mabel Street, named after the builder's wife. And that is tucked away, and in winter, oh, it's dangerous, it's very steep, and postmen have to be really careful going down there. Alan Dolby, an eminent Colne historian, he lived at number 12 Grosvenor Street, and in there, and he managed to get it, he was like me, a collector, and when the old Duke Inn was demolished in 1972, he got the date stone, 1709, and it's still in the backyard, and he had it put on the backyard wall, and I can't get it because he cemented it all in. How rude, and I can't get it. I wanted to prize it out, but that'd be a bit naughty. But it's still there at number 12 Grosvenor Street. So we'll go a bit further on now, and we're going to come to the cemetery shortly with wonderful tales. A lovely ceramic sign there. There's quite a lot of these in Colne. These date back to the First World War period, when many of the cast iron signs were taken down for munitions. And these are wonderful. And of course, the lettering, they'll be like that in another 100 years. And these ceramic signs used to cost £4 each. And they're all over Colne, you can see them. I've took photos of about 100 of them. When they break, of course, if they drop, they smash to smithereens, of course. But there's quite a few which are survivors, which I'm very pleased about. So there it is, York Street. Sorry. The park A nice 1864 cast iron sign there, made by W.B. White's from Burnley Road. And the park was the first school in Colne by J. Lascelles Wildman. And Wildman's Arcade is the arcade just next to Oddy's there, near the hole in the wall, Market Tavern now. And the park was started as a private school back in the early 1820s. And what happens is, this is the interesting thing, and then it became, of course, LCC, the Lancashire County Council Park School. So the one up Venables Avenue and the one on Rutland Street are named after this little park school that was started by Mr. Wildman back in the 1820s. So I'm glad the sign survives, because that gives you the history. If anybody went to Park, that's where it all began. The best named street in Colne, I love this street, Primrose Hill. What a name, you know. You think you're in another world. You think you've gone to the Cotswolds or somewhere, but we're in Body Colne. I love these little buildings down here. We'll go and have a look at them. (1874) that one. That's 10 years later than the one at the corner.
Oh, you go. I lived on Keighley Road 20 years and never been down here.
Victorian England at its best. I think it's wonderful. A hidden corner of Old Colne. And these date back, of course, to the 1860s. And they're still just as they would be all them years ago. I think it's a wonderful escape to the past. And this is how bonny Colne used to be, you know. And I mean, this wall will have been there 300 years. Mabel Street's just over there. If you have a peep, you can see the sign, 1874 sign, and Primrose Hill sign at the top. I always love seeing this little quadruple buildings from all those years ago. Wonderful. Off to the cemetery, the dead centre of Colne.
Yeah.
You're all right, you're all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm a volunteer litter picker for Cork Council, Geoff.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd come and support you.
Hey, thank you. That's very good of you. Where do you live?
Near Knots Lane.
Oh, yeah. It's all right up there. Yeah.
But we're born in Warrington.
Right.
What's that symbol?
I'm going to tell you in a minute. Here we are, another benchmark. If you go to an Ordnance Survey map, it'll tell you exactly how high you are above sea level. Brilliant. This is the only one in Colne, and there were 31 in Colne. I think a couple have been demolished, but this one has been painted in. How marvellous. So benchmarks, they give you an indication of just how high you are and an indication where you are. Marvellous. I like that.
Oh, the coat of arms.
Yes, a good one.
Yeah.
Are we all right?
Yes, thank you.
A wonderful coat of arms etched in stone there. Look at the name below, Calvin Knight. and there it is, 1899. This, of course, is a lodge house for the cemetery, which was built in 1860. The spire there and all the cemetery. There's more dead people in Colne than live in. There's about 80,000 graves there now. Some of them communal, of course, which has up to 30 people in. Infant mortality in the Victorian period was high, of course. But this has been taken over recently. I had a friend, Jack Lane, who used to be the registrar, and you could go to him and ask where a grave was, and he pointed straight to it. My dear wife Ruth's little sister's buried there, died at 16 month old in 1946. And many Colners are there, of course. One of the best graves there is Brian Brisk Clark, Big Brian. He has one of the biggest graves there. The biggest funeral ever in Colne, of course, was Wallace Hartley. He's right down at the bottom. We won't go down today because it's a long way down. It's on the left-hand side, a wonderful grave there with the violin on and the first two lines of Near Am I God to Thee. The wonderful thing is 55,000 people in Colne that day, 1912. 1,525 people died, including Wallace, of course. But just as his coffin was being lowered into the grave, and this was a wonderful thing, and it actually happened, Albion, his father, Albion Hartley, wrote about it in the paper after, and he said, tears in his eyes, a skylark wound round and round as the coffin was going in, and it was singing. Oh, wonderful. It must have been a wonderful thing to see and hear. And that's all them years ago. So there it is, the lodge house. Calvin Knight, of course, who was the mayor at the time. We'll now go down to the Power Loom riots of 1840. Just down here, ladies and gents. The Power Loom riots of 1840, when the militia came to Colne from Preston, 200 officers, all armed with swords and pistols, and they made 200 special constables that night, the 10th of August, 1840. And what happened was, there was great unrest over Colne. They were losing the jobs, and also the wages were being reduced. It's like AI today, of course. And the power looms were running, and they didn't need the manpower. Colne was in a state of flux. These men were getting angrier and angrier, and nothing was being done. So what happened on this night of the 10th of August, they were meeting in all the pubs. Got to remember, 51 pubs in Colne then, and they were getting together. Somebody knew that Christ Church, which had just been built 4 years earlier in 1836, had all the metal railings put up, which are all taken down now during the war effort because they took them all down in 1940, 1941. And these metal railings had fisher's spikes on the top, and about 100 of them were in the vault at Christ Church. And one of the blokes who was actually a teller at the actual Christ Church, he used to put out all the cassocks and everything, he knew where these railings were. They went to the vault, a crowd of about 50 Colners, some of the toughest men in Colne, and they got the iron spikes and iron railings to fight off the militia and the special constables. On this terrible night, what they did then, they went down all these streets, and you know all the streets, Nineveh Street, Parliament Street, Clayton Street, Shackleton Street, St John Street, Railway Street. They were all around there, going berserk, smashing windows. They went to the mills down in Waterside, 5 mills there, breaking windows, getting the spikes. But this poor fella here, John Halstead, he was killed that night with a spike through his head from one of these from Christchurch. I've asked a good friend of mine, Michael Cave, who's actually been going to the church for over 50 years, to look in the vault and see if there's any spikes. The actual spike that did the heinous crime is in Town Geoff. It ain't on display, but I have seen it at an exhibition in I think it was 1970, and they put an exhibition on, and also there was Bob Thompson's famous Studder belt, which he was fined £25 for having in 1956. You weren't allowed to have Studder belts then. They used to go to Sam Ansell's and get studs to put in the belt. And of course, if you took them off down the imp or whatever, you could keep Barlick Teds at bay. So, you know, it used to happen, believe me. So poor old John Halstead, the man who did the crime, and they said they went through the courts. Nobody really knows that he was this young lad. He was 20 years old and he was convicted solely on having a cap. Like Edward there, he had a blue cap on. Edward's is black, but he had a blue one on. And what happened was, when it came to the court, the magistrate, a bit like sending Derek Bentley down all them years ago, which should never have happened, he sent this young man down, Richard Boofman. He gave him the death sentence. He actually put the black cap on and gave him but it was overturned because so many people came forward and said it wasn't Richard Boofman who lived down Clayton Street. They said it was somebody else who had gone and legged it away to Cross Hills. Now, who knows, after all these years, it was 1840. What happened was, it was overturned and it was sent on a ship to Van Diemen's Land. Van Diemen's Land? Tasmania. This is where they used to send people who had been convicted in those days. Went to Tasmania and became a success. He married, he got a sheep farm, he got 100 acres and became a millionaire. So perhaps, you know, he wasn't the heinous villain that everybody said he was. So he is buried here all them years ago, Joseph Halstead, a special constable of Colne, and that day is infamous in Colne's history, of course, but we still have the stone there to tell about it. This was his son, of course, that was his wife, and there it is, Joseph Halstead of Colne. All them years ago, August the 10th, a terrible thing. I've just remembered something about the standing stones, which I must tell you about. You must go and look at them. I didn't go down today because it came on very heavy. But the 17 standing stones, this was a wonderful thing that nobody does now. And what you used to do, you used to get your pals. I used to go with Bob Thompson, Colne's first teddy boy, wonderful character, died at 52 sadly, Bob, but the best bopper in the world. He won the Astoria Bopping Championship in 1957. Oh, he was better than Chuck Berry and anybody. And Andrew Carson, there was Tony Irving, Malx Graham, Alan Lister, and you stand at the bottom, and this is what you have to do. You stand at the bottom where the 17th stone is. It starts from 1 to 17, and somebody at the top is counting 1 to 10, somebody at the bottom's counting 1 to 10, and you have to run as fast as you can and see how many stones you can count off. You don't count, of course, you just run past them. But the record is Bob Thompson in 1957, when he won the Bopping Championship, and he went past 15 stones. Nobody's ever done 17. I want you to try it later. Jacob would win, I think. He's got the legs for it. I think he'd be all right. I'd still have a double. I'd probably get 3. It were a wonderful. I wish they did it today. Nobody plays out now. You never see. Our street is quiet at night. Nobody plays out. We used to play Relievo, Kick the Can, Stroker Back, Queenie or Coco. All these games have all gone. Marbles, football. There were only one car down our street. When we used to do that, coming up Carrie Lane, There were no cars. You never saw a car because, of course, in the 50s, very few people could afford cars. You know, petrol were 3 and 6 a gallon, but nobody had cars, so it didn't matter. So there it is, Joseph Halstead. Does anybody want to go down to Wallace, or shall we leave it for another day? It's entirely up to you. Well, we won't do it now because it is a long, long trek. You've got to go down the centre there. This wonderful spire, which was built in 1860, has some fantastic gargoyles around. They say that they based off quite a few Colnes, but said them all. But there's some wonderful gargoyles all around. I've been inside that building and there are about 30 pigeons all nested with eggs there. I didn't get them. I've had quail's eggs, but I don't want pigeon eggs. Anyway, it's still a wonderful building, and it's very moving when you're inside, because when you think all the people who've been buried here, you know, they are running out of space, so get your name down if you want to. Right, we'll go a bit further on now. I'm glad it's lined up for us. A lovely sycamore tree there. That'll have been there at least 200 years. Where that building is there was a wonderful medieval house from 1623 called Naylor's House. And Joseph Naylor was the man who built it. Wilfred Spencer put it in his first book, saying, "Here lies a mystery," because nobody really knew about it. It was obviously a very wealthy man, and it stretched right along the front. No cemetery here, of course, then. And Naylor's house was there when the battle took place on the 25th of June, 1644. The 25th of June, 1644. The Roundheads and Cavaliers, the Royalists and Parliamentarianisms. A mighty battle took here in this very place. And all down at the cemetery there, you can find musket balls, cannon balls. They sent over 800 Royalists. They won the day. The Royalists beat the Parliamentarians, Cromwell. I think that's why Cromwell said when he got to Foul Ridge, "What's that foul ridge over there?" He actually said it. That's why it's Foul Ridge. "What's that foul ridge over there?" What a nasty bloke. No wonder he had all them warts. He's a gargoyle. He is a gargoyle. Anyway, this mighty battle took place. The Royalists won. So any old-time Colne like me, and I am old time, believe me, I'm a walking antique. So this field is known as King's Field from that day. And the Royalists who won, it's a horrible thing, but they stretched all the dead bodies of the Parliamentarianisms all along the front of King's Field, so people could see that they won the day. And of course, it didn't happen that way in the end, because what happened, of course, Cromwell got to the throne, a pretty evil bloke. If you have one of his coins today, they're worth at least £50,000. I've seen one, I've never owned one. But King's Field, so remember when you go past, all them years ago, the 25th of June, 1644, the mighty battle happened here. We'll go on to the cricket field now, another wonderful place. Robert,
Hello.
my friend.
How are you?
I'm very well, 82, I've given it yet.
Ah.
Hey! My dear friend Robert, he's lived at 162 Keighley Road all his life. His brother Stanley was one of my dear friends, your twin brother.
Yeah.
And his brother Freddie was one of the great stumpers for Colne Cricket Club.
What?
You're a legend, Robert. Come here, get us on camera. My dear friend Robert, it's good to see you.
Right.
Look after yourself. All the best. Hey! Well done, Robert. Born and bred in Colne, at Colne. A lovely postbox. I've been painting for many years. I keep ringing them up and saying, "Can you paint the postboxes?" This has been here, it's a genuine antique, since 1911. George V, of course, with all 6 reigns. The problem is, there's now 7 reigns. We want a Charles III, because we have an Edward VIII postbox. There's now only 5 left. The A1 standing ones, and if you go down to Hyde Park, there it is, a wonderful Edward VIII pillar box, which is there from 1936. It used to be on Burnley Road, but I had it moved so I can keep an eye on it, because I live Lancaster Street. I've lived there 57 years, and we keep an eye on that Edward VIII. An American got in touch with the Royal Mail and the post office and said, could he buy an Edward VIII postbox? And he offered, you won't believe this, he offered 50,000 American dollars for one. And the post office had none spare, thankfully. So, but that is a survivor, and it's a nice box, but it does need painting. So with all 6 reigns, you can find them all in Colne. It's Victoria, Edward VII, King George V, King George VI, Queen Elizabeth II. We want a Charles III. On to the cricket club. Sorry about that, I forgot about Sagar Fold. Oh dear. Are we all right?
Sure, when you do this next year, Geoff, dear, we have better weather.
We hope so. But the last time I did it was wonderful weather. But it's nice now, isn't it? I've got to talk about Sagar Fold, and that's modern side, of course. There was an ancient one. There used to be in the centre of this square here a little row of 6 cottages which dated back to 1769. Sagar Fold, named after a man called Henry Sagar, who built them, and the Browns lived there, the Phillipses lived there, the Howleys lived there, the Harleys lived there, all old Colners lived there. It was a haven, just like Primrose Hill, which also today, which is a wonderful step back, Sagar Fold was. But nobody living today has seen it, because they were demolished round about the 1920s. So you'd have to be a good age to remember it. So anyway, Sagar Fold, when you see it, just think back in time, because it was a wonderful bit of old Colne, just like we saw on Primrose Hill. Right, onwards and upwards. Are we all here? Another forgotten corner of Colne. And these cottages are ancient. These are the 1860s again, and it's called Cork Cottage, 88 Keighley Road. And a dear friend of mine, Mabel Street, who used to be the delicatessen lady, first at Scott's Supermarket, where Farm Foods is today. That was the first supermarket in Colne, opened 1964, before Asda, 1971. And dear Mabel lived there. She's a beautiful lady. Her husband, Jack Ridehouse, but she had a daughter who was the most stunning girl in Colne. She could have been Miss World. They called her Hazel Ridehouse, and everybody wanted to go out with her. Believe me, in the 60s, if you got out with Hazel Ridehouse, you were 10 foot tall. And then she went to Barry Woods. Now, Barry Woods lived up Lagroy. It was the most envied man in Colne. And Hazel, she's a lovely girl, what a bonny girl. And Mabel was her dear mum. And eventually, of course, Barry died and she married John Gouch. Now, John Gouch's mum I went to school with, they called her Janet Hanley. And the Hanleys came to Colne, being bombed out like my mum and dad from Coventry. And she married John Gouch. And Hazel now, I believe, is on the road. So I don't know whether she'll find another suitor, but with her looks, I'm pretty sure she will. So these little cottages, another step back in time. And there's one for sale there if you want to make an offer and escape to the past. Colne Cricket Club, we'll get there eventually.
You can piece on the tractor.
Yeah. Oh, it's tractor run. Oh, that's good. Hey. Here they come. Hey, how about that? It's a bonus. It's only about 40.
Really?
Yeah. Hey. Brilliant. Hey! Where these bungalows are, there used to be some very ancient Cork cottages, bulldozed down sadly, and they dated back to the 1800s, very early 1800s, and now you've got some very nice buildings there. A good pal of mine lives there, Roy Davis, who I worked with at Scott's supermarket all them years ago, and it's always been a nice little corner of Colne. And further on, we'll tell you some of the residents. We want 121. Let's see where it is. I think it's on this row here. Anyway, at number 121, for many, many years lived Luther Greenwood, who was a musical genius of Colne. The Luther Greenwood Festival has gone now. It went from 1946 until 2024. 2023. And Luther Greenwood lived there, telephone number Colne 82, and Luther sadly died in 1946. And further on, we'll tell you some more gentlefolk of Colne. Over there, of course, is the Grange, now residence home. Usually has about 10 to 15 people in there, and many well-known corners ended the days there, of course. During the war, it was Fenners, and Fenners, who had a company in Colne, had it as a hostel, and lots of people who were from the war stayed there at Fenners Hostel. Many old corners remember it as that. It's a lovely building inside. There's some lovely stained glass windows, and it's a good place to end your days if you want to, you know, go out in style. It probably costs you £1,000 a week or whatever. But this house, 130, some very famous Colners have lived here. Walter Hurst, not the mayor, but the chap who had Hurst Chemist in Colne. He lived here for 48 years. And Wilfred Micah Spencer, the renowned coal historian, lived here for many, many years with his 5 children and his dear wife, Helen. And Wilfred died, of course, in 1975, aged 56, leaving 5 children in his widow. A lot of my memorabilia, Bell's Yard, Chapel Court signs, came from Helen when Wilfred died. And it's a lovely home. I mean, all on here, these have always been called the posh part of Colne. These houses are very nice. And today, Claire Smith, an accountant of the decade, who works for Colne Life, of course, and Northern Life, she lives there today with her husband and dear daughter, Sophia. And these houses have always been come at a price, so you have to pay the price if you want to live here. So we'll go on now. I'll give you another house, and then we'll tell you Colne Cricket Club. Colne Cricket Club, of course. This one, 144, is Mark Bateman's home, Colne Bookshop. If you want to book, go to Mark's. His father, Logan Bateman, caught the greatest catch ever on Colne Cricket Field in the 1950s. Vinu Mankad swept it like this. It was going for the boundary, and Logan Bateman, they say on these days, leapt 10 foot in the air to catch it. And everybody who was there that day went berserk. It was the finest catch ever, and that was Mark's father, Logan Bateman. Colne Cricket Club, the horse field. Why the horse field? There used to be 12 horses grazing here all those years ago in the 1820s. And then Richard Sagar of Keighley House, where Sarah Coburn Price and her husband David and son Edward live today. Keighley House, 1777. Wonderful building, a Georgian mansion house which has survived. So Richard Sagar of Keighley House and Thomas Thornber of Vivery House, just at the bottom of our street, till they bulldozed it down in the 1990s. That dated back to 1690, bulldozed it down. So those two people went to a cricket match, which were very rare in them days. Cricket matches were unbelievably rare. And they went to Leeds, they went to Yorkshire. Ooh, White Rose, how rude. Anyway, they came back and decided They wanted a cricket field in Colne. They went all round and they bought the horse field. All the horses, all 12 of them, were sold off to farmers all around, and that became, in 1830, the first cricket field in Lancashire. The first proper cricket field, and of course the forerunner of the Lancashire League. They were founder members all them years back in 1890, I think 1888, yeah, and we've won many trophies there over the years. Of course, where Robert lives, just a bit further on that row there, all the houses were insured because Big Bill Alley, who came to Colne in 1948, an Australian, the first autograph I ever got, Bill Alley, best wishes, 1948. I was 5 years old. He was coming down our street and he was coming to the chairman's house there. He used to live down our street. And what happened was, my dad says, "Who's that fella?" And my mum said, "It's that new professional, Bill Alley, enormous." And he signed my autograph book. I've still got it all them years. He used to hit sixes. He used to hit, he hit one right in the centre of the Grange over there. The biggest hit ever. Not really. Malcolm Blackhurst, who's 85 now, he played with the double side in 1959 when they won the Worsley Cup and the league. I saw every match that season. I used to get off work and come and watch them. Okay. I didn't tell them what I was doing. Anyway, what happened was Malcolm hit a six. He went in a coal wagon and it ended up in Cowling. The biggest hit ever by Malcolm Blackhurst. Malcolm Pollard, another cricket fanatic, came out to the wicket in 1960 without his bat. He had to go back. The cheers and coming out to bat without his bat, it was brilliant. Nobody ever forgot who saw it and give him stick every time he saw him. "Where's your bat, Malcolm?" Some wonderful players. Amar Singh in the 1930s. He played for Colne. He broke 3 bats in one innings when he hit 121 in 45 minutes. Amar Singh. He went back to India to see his parents and sadly died of pneumonia at the age of 29. Stanjay Singh, he brought us a double, a Sri Lankan, Ceylonese then they called it, it was Ceylon then. He's still living at 93. Stanjay Singh, what a lovely fella. There were Frank Taylor, the captain, Jeff Schofield. There's some wonderful players here over the years. Alan Braithwaite, Matthew Constable, Gary Hunt, I can name them all. Tyrrell Gorder. There's been dozens and dozens. Trevor Lonsdale, he's 82 next week, he's same as me. He's an old devil. But the Colne Cricket Club has seen some wonderful times. The highest gate was in Constantine versus Amar Singh. There were 10,000 people on that cricket ground that day. 6pence entrance, 6pence, 2.5 to get in. 10,000 people. They'll never get that again. They'd have to have Bob Dylan playing there to get that. But it's a wonderful ground and it has atmosphere to this day. And when I think of all them wonderful players over the years, you know, there's been some marvellous happenings on Colne Cricket Field. The horse field. No horses today, just white flannels and the sound of baton ball. We'll go on now and I'll tell you about the Craven Heifer Inn.
Was the bowling green?
Yes, the bowling green still. Yeah, still a good bowling green.
Oh yeah, and I'm saying, was it opened at the same time?
Yes, it was. Yeah. Oh, I better mention I'll just mention my dear stepdad. His father was the Mayor of Colne in 1946 to 47. That was Herbert Snell. But my stepdad, my dear mum married him. Mum Daisy married Hyman Snell. He played for Colne Cricket Club from 1925 to 1952. All them years, he took 279 wickets. He was a lovely fella, and he played there all them years. There's nobody played longer. And of course, he was a spin bowler. And in them days, you know, I went with our grandson Nathan recently to see Phil Tufnell and Jonathan Agnew. And Phil Tufnell tells a tale. We caught him earlier having a smoke, and we had a photo with him, and he says his fingers were nicotine stained. He says, Phil, smoking. He says, it's all right, Jeff, I'm down to 40 a day now. Anyway, he says, I was doing a tour, and he said, this fella came into the dressing room. He says, it was King Henry VIII. It wasn't King Henry VIII. It was Mike Gatting, enormous. Anyway, we're limping. He says, Mike, what have you done? He says, I've got a stone in my shoe. He says, aye, you've got 25 stone in the other. Brilliant bloke, Phil Tufnell. He never played here. Here we have it, another First World War pot signs. Gill Sands, of course, the lettering, same as they used to use on British Railways, on all the totems that used to be there. And the survivors, I think they're wonderful signs. When you think they're all over 100 years old now, and if they haven't been dropped, they'll last for another 100 years. They never need cleaning. They're marvellous. And they were made at a company, I believe, in Lancashire somewhere. I can't find out who made them, but they're certainly a wonderful step into the past, because everyone you see, the longest one in Colne is Cumberland Street, and it goes on forever. I like that one, but that's a nice one as well, Claremont. Here we are. Swanfield House. This was James Taylor, the borough surveyor, lived there for many, many years. I've been in quite a few times. The most wonderful stone fireplace you'll ever see. It was built by George Hanson, and he got all the stone because he had a farm there, all near Blacker Tower. And there's a wonderful, really warm coloured stone fireplace, like orangey stone. A lovely home. It's been home to many notable Colne families over the years, the Folds and the Hartleys, and it's a beautiful building, Swanfield. This number 180 was Fred Stearns. Now, Fred Stearn demolished most of the buildings in Colne. It was a house demolisher, and he demolished Cornclough Hall. We'll never forgive him for that. Well, I do forgive him, because she had a beautiful daughter called Gillian Stearn, and she was another good looker like Hazel. So, but Fred lived there with his wife. His son Peter Stearn went in the French Foreign Legion and was killed. And he owned the Alma Inn for many, many years, did Fred Stearn. And on the anniversary of his son's death, he used to get a trumpeter come and play the last pulse. It was very moving. I've been twice to hear that, and that was his dear son Peter Stearn. But Gillian, she was a good looker in the 50s. Yeah. So Swanfield House. But at the corner there, where them trees are, used to be the Craven Heifer Inn. Craven Heifers, there used to be 12 all in Lancashire, all named after the giant Craven Heifer, which was a mighty cow that they took all round, showing people. It was 60 stone. It was the largest cow in Christendom. It was enormous. And the Craven Heifer was there. And then they closed during the First World War because of after-hours drinking. And they didn't want men drinking when they were going off to the war, of course, like the Accrington Pals and all them. So the Craven Heifer. But what happened then, Dr. Skene took it over as a doctor's surgery. And then Dr. Harold Buller, he was there from 1933 to 1966. And Dr. Harold Buller was a doctor really well known in Colne, and he died in 1966. So what did they do? They bulldozed his house and home down shortly after. Gone forever, the Craven Heifer. Everybody calls it Heifer Lane. There is no Heifer Lane. There used to be a bus stop, Heifer Lane. There's never been a Heifer Lane, it's Cotton Tree Lane. But all Colners call it Heifer Lane after the Craven Heifer, which is there no more. It's gone. It's gone for all time, sadly. Up there is one of the most lovely lanes in Colne. Lidget, of course, which means road to the common, and further round is Faverdale Road, where many of the Colne gentry lived. Faverdale Road. Gadsill, named after, of course, Charles Dickens, Gadsill, was Noel Earnshaw's home. He was the manager of Francis Duckworth, who wrote Remington. That was his home, Gadsill. Pendle Dean was Lionel Aubrey Venables, who was the town clerk of Colne. Telephone number 300. If you wanted the town hall, you just dialed 300 and you get him straight away. He had two lovely daughters, Peggy Venables and Kay Venables, stunning ladies, and they lived there all them years. But at Red Bank, further down, was Ebenezer William Foley, who was born at 10 Exchange Street. His father looked after the Wesleyan Chapel there. And Ebenezer William Foley lived from 1872 to 1968. He was a Colne historian of great note. I met him many times. I used to go to his home at Red Bank and he'd tell you tales. There were no cars in Colne. When you wake up, you heard the clip-clop of horses' hooves. Nobody had a telephone, nobody had a car. There was no technology. Nobody had a mobile phone. Hello, hello. He was a wonderful fella, and he lived till he was 96. He was a Freeman of Colne. The proudest day of his life, he said, just as it was for me when I became a Freeman. So, Faverdale Road there. I wonder, do have a look at it sometime. That's a lovely row in Colne. All here, these new buildings, this was Craven Garage, a wonderful garage. Harry Blackburn had it. His daughter, Renee P. Blackburn, was a Colne poet. She was a wonderful poet, and she wrote about Colne and all about the people. And that was Craven Garage. Everybody used to come there. They always had an old motor car there, a classic car today to be. Always had some wonderful cars for sale. So this is where we come to at the end of our tour. I'm sorry it rained, ladies and gents, but I think what you've got to say now is I'm going to give some more half crowns out. So I'm asking some questions and see if you get it right. A very hard one for you now. Oh, I forgot Mr. Foley's telephone number. When I used to ring him up, 885, because you used to dial on the old phones there. His telephone was 885. Can anybody remember, this is a real test, Luther Greenwood's telephone number at 121 Keighley Road? Hello. No, have a guess.
80. What?
84.
What was his
Telephone number.
yeah, the same as his house number.
No, not far off. It was 62, but you were near enough. You got it, Jim.
We must be granted to 60.
All right. Right. Which do I feel is the most pleasant sounding street in Colne? This lady got it. There you go. Right. Who hit a ball to Cowley from Colne Cricket Club? It went on the back of a coalman's.
Lawson.
No,
Billy somebody.
it begins with M and it ends B. No, Malcolm Blackhurst.
Oh, that's
What was my stepdad's name? Who played for Colne Cricket Club?
Snell?
Yes,
Snell? Oh.
I'm Snell. Yes, well done. Well done. Right, I've got another one for you now. We saw a tree, which I mentioned, coming along. Can you remember the name of the tree? You said it before. I've only one left now. Can you tell me, and put your hands up for this, how old Marilyn Monroe would be today?
99.
He's got it, but he's already had
I
one.
got one, yeah.
Yeah. Who else put their hand up first? That lady. There you go. Well done.
Can I say, Jeff, that you I don't know what Colne would do without you. We remembering all this things we didn't know ever.
Thank
And
you.
you're just wonderful. Your knowledge, the information you give us.
I'm fortunate. I have a gift of memory.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful gift.
Thank you from Colne Town Council and the people of Colne.
Thank you. Well, we'll finish off by doing what Samuel Catlow did on the 14th of January 1894 when he opened those doors for the first time where Howard and Mary and all the Colne Council meet and do good for our town. And he stood there and he said, ladies and gentlemen, 3 cheers for Bonnie Colne. Hip hip, hooray! Hip hip, hooray! Hip hip, hooray! Thank you for coming, everybody. It means a lot to me. Thank you.
Thank you.